Acknowledge certain guests among us. I'd like to start with the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Zimbabwe President, Mr. Martin Makaya.
Please stand. It's amazing to note that we have successfully passed on power for 100 years every single year. Eh? Thanks, Martin.
We also have here present the ICAZ CEO, Mr. Fayaz Chaudhry. Not yet, yeah. Okay. ICAZ Senior Vice President, Mr. Tapiwa Chizana.
Proper succession planning.
ICAZ Junior Vice President, Mr. Fungai Kuipa. IFAC COO, Mrs. Alta Prinsloo. She hasn't joined us. PAAB Chair, Mr. Brian Dikizana. PAFA CEO, Mr. Vixon Mube. PAAB Secretary, Mr. Admaya Nduru. ICAZ CEO, Mr. Metz Kunaka. We'd like to also acknowledge the ICAZ past presidents here present. We have Mike Frad, Nyara Dzidube, Walter Mpanguri, Mr. Walter Mpanguri, Mr. Vulindlela Ndlovu, Mr. Metz Kunaka, Mr. Tinashe Rodzi, and Mr. Bothwell Nyajeka.
Sorry.
We'd also like to acknowledge all the ICAZ Council members present, the Mashonaland Society Committee members, the Public Relations Committee members, the ICAZ members, the Secretariat, media partners, and all the ladies and gentlemen. We'd also like to acknowledge presence of other POs. We've got the CEO for ACA and for CIS. Maybe have it. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to make a special mention to our sponsors. We've got Marion Hill Chartered Accountants, if there's a representative. Econet Wireless. And last but not least, the Mikkels Hotel.
Right, moving on to our welcome remarks. Our welcome remarks will come from our president, Mr. Martin Makaya. Mr. Makaya has been with BDO for a period of 18 years where he is a partner. Over the past couple of years, he has also been involved in various other projects. At one point, he was the financial director of Fidelity Life Assurance. He was also a lecturer where he taught accounting and auditing. He's a very progressive man who's quite keen on ensuring that the brand of the ICAZ profession continues to grow, not just in Zimbabwe, but internationally. Mr. Makaya, please come through.
Hope he does talk. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, what a response. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So first I should say thank you to those who are saying I look smart. The compliments are noted. Those, I'm sure, who were fearing that I could not be well, I'm safe and very sound. One thing I've noticed that the salutations have been done, but I'll try and run through again. I should recognize the presence of Maichiri if she has come through. You realize that these salutations are meant for those that we invited and were meant to be here by now, but may still join us. So if she comes through, we'll be graced by the Auditor General Maichiri, who also receive Mr. Mchemwa. As you have heard, we also receive the IFAC CEO, Fayez Chodhary, and also, if possible, we'll see the arrival of the IFAC COO, Mrs. Auta Prinsloo. We also expect the presence of Vixen Ncibe. Vixen is the PAFA CEO. And also we expect the presence of the PAB Secretary, Admaya Ntunturu. And as I proceed with the salutations, I also need to acknowledge the presence of the ICAZ Senior Vice President, Tapiwa Chizana. There's one striking thing about this young man. Some say possibly we're born of the same father. We somehow look alike, I said. It's good. But one thing we have allocated, we've given each other some roles. As the senior vice president, we have given him the role of the defense. So he'll be responsible for defense and for national reconciliation and some peace, putting together peace aspects. We have got the junior vice president, Fungai Kuipa, is there. I should also in particular recognize the CEO of ICAZ and past president, Mr. Kunaka. That has been done as well. I'm excited as well to acknowledge the presence of past presidents. We have read, we have got Mr. Due. I also saw Koma Vuli walking in. Vuli is here. If you could also put up a hand. He's the past president of ICAZ and those who have been mentioned. I work through council, the ICAZ council, so I recognize the presence of all council members who came across. I can see Dudu, I can see Tuma is also a council member, and others that I have not mentioned by name. Those who have organized this function, that is the National and Society Committee, led by Sabina Chitewe. Sabina, you can raise up a hand to show the girl child that is doing wonderfully well. All members who are here, ICAZ members and their spouses. In particular, I should recognize a key dignitary in our midst. We've got Adrian and Lorraine Watson, all the way from UK. If you can stand up a bit. They flew in. Unfortunately, they lost 2 of their bags, but they still made an effort to be here with us. Well done. Everyone here present, it is indeed a great honor to be talking to you this evening. 2018 for ICAZ is a great year. It's a special year because we are turning 100, and specifically on the 12th of January this year, we will be turning 100. And the accountant's profession, I should say, immediately I should highlight, it is led by PAB, there's a Public Accountants and Auditors Board, comprising of 8 professional accountants organizations. And we advise that the total membership in terms of accountants in the country, we stand at about 5,000. And of the 5,000, 2,000 members are ICAZ. So clearly, you see our leadership in terms of numbers today. ICAZ in 1918 was formed by 14 members, only 14. And now we are about 2,100. If you do your mathematics, if you try and apply what is the average increase from 14 to 2,000, if you also do the averaging, you will see our annual growth in terms of numbers, and we're excited about the 2,000 that we have reached today. And in addition, I must highlight the key issues that ICAZ is very proud about. And the first one being that, we were a colony in 1980. That is no secret. But then you find this profession was really largely for the whites. The blacks were very few in the profession then. But today, we've ICAZ over the years successively integrated blacks into the white-dominated profession. And today we are proud that ICAZ members have pioneered black advancement. Hence, we also see prominent names like Mr. Kudenga, Mr. Ruzengwe, Zreva, to name but just a few. The second point is that besides the negativities associated with Zimbabwe since independence, ICAZ's brand has remained very strong, retaining an equally strong international status. So ICAZ to date has 6 reciprocal agreements with Australia, in New Zealand, South Africa, Ireland, Scotland, Hong Kong, and in those countries, in other countries, we've got over 50%. So about 1,000 of the 2,000 of the ICAZ members actually work outside Zimbabwe. And some say that's a disadvantage. Yes, it was a skills shortage. It gives us that skills shortage. But what I must emphasize is that it gives us that international network, that wherever you are able to actually reach out to an ICAZ member. Thirdly, if you remember when hyperinflation ravaged the economy between 2005 and 2008, ICAZ successfully convinced the International Accounting Standards Body, setting body, to amend one of the key accounting standards to take into account the conditions in Zimbabwe. And that amendment to this date, to that accounting standard, remains a historical development in the accounting profession worldwide. Also, fourthly, we are proud as ICAZ that it has produced both local and international business leaders. And I did a survey of the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, and we're looking at about 53 entities. Out of the 53 entities, 57, in fact, it has got about 90 board members, the entire ZSE. Of the 90 board members, those who are ICAZ members are 57, and that gives you about 74%. So largely you can see our leadership that ICAZ is really has got the influence over the operations of the local boss. And also I looked at the sample of 14 banks, and out of the 14 banks, in the 14 banks, you find there are about 140 members. That tells you the size of the board membership in banks is actually pretty large. Of the 14 banks and of the 140 board members, we have about 28 who are ICAZ members, and that gives you about 18.5%. So 18.5% of board members who sit for the banks are actually ICAZ members. Going further, we also looked at the state-owned enterprises. We sampled 8 state-owned enterprises, and of those 8, it has got about 32 board members. And sadly, only 2 members, only 2 of the 32 are ICAZ. And what that tells you is that we are actually quite thin when it comes to state-owned enterprises. Nevertheless, your council, the ICAZ Council, is working tirelessly on having a fair representation at the state-owned enterprises. And I can see one of the members you're talking about is here. So we'll see it's your job to actually have the numbers grow on SOEs. Many people are now eager to sit on SOEs. I can assure you, we are all ready to sit on those boards. The fifth point for which ICAZ is quite is very happy about is the examination and training system, which is regarded in the world as the second best. What you find is that our training system and examination system is the second in the world. And for that reason, it explains the 50% that you see of our members being abroad. Our members are saying, please do not often use the word diaspora. We are members outside Zimbabwe. So those outside Zimbabwe, we are very happy that you are actually keeping the brand quite strong. The sixth item why ICAZ is celebrating the 100 years is that locally we are working with key government institutions such as the Auditor General's Office, the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, and the Ministry of Finance. And we have monthly engagements with these institutions. Again, through these engagements, ICAZ provides technical assistance whenever required. And this collaborative effort with the government happens through our ICAZ Public Sector Task Force, which is quite active and is led by Botho Nyacheka. The sixth point for which we are happy to be here as ICAZ today is that we've worked very closely with the insurance sector. One of our members is actually a commissioner of a board, a commission that was set up to look at what has happened in the insurance sector. That is Anes Daga. We're glad he's here again. He's a member of ICAZ, and we're having that significant influence when it comes to issues to do with people's pensions. And also on the, eighthly, undoubtedly, ICAZ has contributed to sound corporate governance system through its seminars and publications. That I can expand on. I'm just listing those things that we have managed to achieve as ICAZ over the years. And on investment, ICAZ has held seminars locally and abroad. For example, we've actually been up in Dubai. And those who attended that winter school, there's very good and positive feedback that our presence in Dubai is actually given rise to some foreign investment coming into the country. We also had a seminar in South Africa at some point, and also that has borne some fruits. And last but not least, we are proud as ICAZ that we have provided huge opportunities for the girl child. And currently, we have over 20% of our members who are female members. I'm not sure whether I'm right there. Around 20%. So the target, well, we are targeting about 40% in the next 20? By 20? 20? I can't hear that. I don't want to shout the year if I'm not sure. But we have a target of 40% that our membership, our ICAZ membership should comprise of about 40% being what? Being females. So overall, the status of the accounting profession can only be strengthened when both professional accountants in practice and in business are well perceived by society, since they place different roles in the society. That's when I first got into office as your president last year. I said we should focus on enriching ICAZ through sustainable stakeholder engagement. And the engagements are happening daily. Ladies and gentlemen, this centenary year is being celebrated under the theme celebrating our first 100 years, a stepping stone to the next 100 years. It is pertinent to say that we know what ICAZ has been, we know what ICAZ is today, but do we know what ICAZ would be in the years to come, and in particular, a century from today? Will ICAZ influence the destiny of Zimbabwe, Africa, and the world, or will it be vice versa? We are certain of this. Already, plans are underway to establish a centenary fund with the objective of raising funds to establish and construct an ICAZ Center of Excellence in Harare. The establishment will have a conferencing facility, a bigger library, lecture rooms, and e-learning platforms, all services of which will be available to both members and the students. However, for the purpose of this centenary celebration, please permit me to mention, for special recognition, the efforts of, in particular, the Mashonaland District Society, the Centenary Committee that was put together to drive the Centenary celebrations. And in particular, I must say we have a vibrant secretariat led by Mr. Kunaka. And these have selflessly sacrificed their time to organize this particular event. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I hereby deem it a great privilege to welcome you all to this centenary year, and trust that you will enjoy yourselves tonight. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin. I think taking from what you've spoken about, Martin, one of the key areas as an institute and in each of the businesses that we operate in that we need to really focus on is empowering the girl child. I think there is far much more that we can do in each of the different industries to ensure that even within our recruitment processes, we are giving opportunities to ensure that the demographics of ICAZ are also representatives of our population.
Thank you for that, Mr. President. As a woman, I'm particularly excited about the 40%. I'm hoping that it actually moves to maybe 70%. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, throughout the evening, we're going to be holding a raffle, well, a number of raffles. In front of you, you've got mugs, and inside the mugs, there is a number. That number could be your lucky number tonight. So during the course of the evening, we're going to call upon someone to come and pick a number from our bag. And as auditors and former auditors, you're free to come and verify the results. And whoever's number gets picked, you walk away with a beautiful prize. Okay, so we'll start off the first draw.
Look for Madam, how are you? Could you kindly pick up a number? If you pick your own, it's okay. Yeah. Right. 112. Wow, fantastic. Oh, we can confirm that the numbers match. Congratulations.
Thank you. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, right now we're going to have our starters served. And while we're having our starters, we're going to be entertained by the travelers.
So in terms of process, in terms of your starters, the different waiters and waitresses will come to your table. So we'll go through a 15-20 minute interlude and we'll be right back. Thank you.
We acknowledge some guests who hadn't arrived. The good news is they have now arrived. Please help me welcoming the ICAZ CEO, Mr. Faiz Chaudhry. Joining us tonight, we also have the PAAB Chair and ICAZ Past President, Mr. Brian Kizana. We also have the PAB Secretary, Mr. Admaya Nduru, and Mr. Botho Nyajek, an ICAZ Past President, who's just joined us.
Ladies and gentlemen, as I indicated before, ICAZ has been there now for about 100 years. And there have been some key pioneers over the years who have held this flag from its inception. The man I'm going to introduce to you shortly has been a CA for a period of 47 years. Let that sink. 47 years. How many people are under 47 today? Yes, let's show raise hands. Right. Mr. Adrian Watson was born in 1946. He was educated at Prince Edward and signed articles in 1966 at Pulbrook, Wright and Underwood. During articles, he served on the Student Society and qualified in 1970 and made partner with the same firm in 1972. He served on the Mashonaland District Society, including holding the chairmanship for a year. He served on the FQE exam board, became chairman and senior partner with the same firm in 1986. And then retired in 2006. He is just arrived from the United Kingdom, I believe, where he had gone on holiday so that he could grace this occasion. Thank you for that. He continues to be an active member on a number of boards and charitable trusts and has been honorary treasury at Harare Children's Home for a period of 45 years. Wow. I hear call for support there, so we expect some of you to support him in that process. Adrian is going to represent the long service members. Adrian, please. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. I will follow Malcolm's advice and I will use the lecture.
Yes. Right. Thanks.
Good evening, President of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, the invited dignitaries which have already been acknowledged, and there's a very dignified list there and I won't repeat them. Fellow members of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, their spouses and invited guests. When I received the invite, as was mentioned, I was on holiday in the UK with my family. Now having been a Sekuru for some time, I have actually 9 grandchildren, 6 of which are in the UK and 3 are in Cape Town, so it's important to get to visit them. Mr. Creeper says that I seem to visit every couple of months and only do a couple of hours work. It's not quite right. But when I received the invite, I was on holiday, and I must say, being extremely honored to actually receive that invite and also anxious at the same time. But I thought 100 years of Institute of Chartered Accountants of Zimbabwe, I have to come back and I have to say a few words. So that's why I'm here today for you. It's a significant milestone and it is fantastic achievement for the members of our profession. However, my question that I had on the aeroplane coming back is, what is a gathering of chartered accountants called? You know, we have a pod of hippos and we have flocks of birds, and so I tackled Google this morning to do a little bit of a search. Unfortunately, there was no such description. But I had come up with my own on the aeroplane, and I just wondered if it isn't a number of accountants, or better still, a ledger of accountants being a gathering of numbers. Mr. President, I'll leave that question open for this gathering because maybe they will come up with the collective noun for chartered accountants. However, whatever the message was, I thought I must keep it simple. You know, we chartered accountants, we deal with numbers all day, we must keep this message simple. And so what I've done is I've utilized a quote from Mother Teresa, and it says, "Yesterday is gone, tomorrow has not yet come. We only have today, here we only have tonight, so let us begin." And I think that's probably apt, not only for our profession, but also probably for the country following the change that we've just had. So incorporating the tagline into what's already been mentioned by Martin, 100 years is gone, but let's begin the next 100. And not tiptoe. I think, or did it step on, what did you say, Martin, on stepping stones into the next 100? No, let's step forward. Yeah. Okay, so where did the 100 years go and what was achieved? I have memories, as was mentioned, of the last 51 years, and they're probably best encapsulated by the move of the Institute from the oldie worldy building, which was in 4th Street, was a nice old house, into the beautiful prestigious business premises on number 2 Bath Road. I went there this morning just to check on a couple of things, and interestingly enough, it was named Integrity House by none other than the Minister of Justice at the time, Mr. E.D. Monangagwa. How appropriate's that? The Institute has played a major and significant role in not only the development of Zimbabwe, but as Martin mentioned, also keeping pace with international standards. I was pleased to know that we are number 2 with our education and our standards, and to the extent, as was already mentioned, that we are recognized and we have members spread all around the world. Fantastic achievement. Reverting to the tagline, "We only have today, let us begin," our original members did that 100 years ago. If you can think of the country 100 years ago, a number of them got together and they recognized that a profession is only as strong as its weakest link. Like a chain, it is only as strong as its weakest link. So what they did was they not only introduced the articles of clerkship, a number of them would have qualified overseas and they came in, but they also developed the examination system in order that people had to pass an exam to become part of this profession. And that's still the same case today. The first 50 years, which obviously I wasn't around at that stage, whilst important in developing the profession, were probably sedate and fairly static when it came to accounting and auditing standards. And here I'm definitely going to show my age with this. Show my age a little bit. I signed articles, as was mentioned, in 1966. And at that stage, there were only manual typewriters, manual adding machines, manual facet machines, and a huge comptometer which we as article clerks had to walk around to the various audits. Some of you may not have a clue as to what I'm talking about. Because they were manual, even though we had electricity 24/7 in those days. But there weren't any electric machines. And as article clerks, we were not allowed to use the manual adding machines in case that disturbed our ability to add up columns of numbers in our head. Okay, the electrically operated machines did arrive in this period, and my first partners meeting involved making a decision to buy electric calculators for the partners only. We didn't want to disturb. We couldn't disturb the mind of the article clerks, only the partners. What was important up until that point, when I'm signing articles, was that all study was by correspondence through the School of Accountancy in getting passes, in order for you then to be able to write the final qualifying exams, which were set by the Institute through our own exam board. Really important at that stage. My vintage, however, 1966, was very fortunate, thanks to the foresight of the Institute and also the funding of an endowment by one of the members, a Mr. Bill Suter, to establish the chair of accountancy at the University of Zimbabwe. And this started as a part-time degree. As article clerks, we attended university lectures from 5:30 to 7:30, Mondays to Fridays, and for 2.5 hours on Saturday mornings. Most lecturers were members of the institute, of our institute. They came from the firms. They lectured us on accounting, auditing, and tax, and we had other lecturers to deal with economics and law. And one of our law lecturers, my law lecturers, was in fact advocate, who was then to become a judge, Hilary Squires. Our final accounting year was lectured by the financial director of a quoted company. He gave up his Saturday mornings to come and lecture us accounts, and he was phenomenal in teaching us all about consolidations. It was brilliant. I'm sure you will agree this was tremendous foresight, and the contribution from the members, both in terms of money and time, was fantastic, and it led to the establishment of the full-time accounting degree at the UZ, which is still in operation today. What struck me at the time was the tremendous camaraderie amongst both the article clerks, because as firms we all went up there as article clerks to the lectures, and also the firms who actually provided the senior members of their staff, CAs, to lecture us in the evenings. There was also great competition amongst the clerks and the firms. It extended to the sports fields and obviously to academic. And I was pleased, Martin, that you also paid tribute to the student societies, which were dynamic in those days, and I hope they still are, with all the challenges between the firms, and also the district societies. Those winter schools were fantastic, getting everybody together, and long may they continue. I'm sorry I missed the Dubai one. That's where I came through yesterday. But I would have loved to have been to the Dubai. So that was brilliant. At this time too, just as an aside, I think history, we've come through this 100 years, and it's important to note how the profession developed. At this time it was important that there was a proliferation of small 2 to 5, 6-man accounting firms. There were lots and lots of these firms, okay? This in turn led to the numerous mergers which took place, ultimately the consolidation of larger partnerships leading into the linkage with the international firms, which is what has sort of transpired definitely over the last sort of 20 years. during my 40 years with the same firm, we must have encapsulated more than 25 of these small man practices and partnerships. If Chris House was here, we could have a little run through, and he's been doing a history of the firm, I think, Fungai. I keep getting questions about it. We would have had a list of all the names. But I've got a little story I'm reminded of, and they were partners of mine, Barclay Karper, Eddie Dove, and Oscar Lefevre, who merged their partnership together, a three-man practice. And in those days, the partnerships took on the full names of the partners, their surnames. So there was obviously great debate as to whose name came first. And in this instance, Barclay Karper told me they resorted to the toss of a coin to see who came first, and then, which obviously related to the name of the firm becoming Dove, Karper, and Lefevre. Okay, the same principle was applied many years later with Reuben Moss, who was representing, put together, and that name was shortened to Moss, Dove and Co. Ultimately, I lead through that because they were all partners of mine, leading to Arthur Young, which was the international firm following the merger between Pulbrook Wright and Underwood, George Mackenzie and Co., and Moss Dove. And that led us to Arthur Young. At the time I was chairman, and my mother, however, was most confused when a few years later I came back and said, no, the name isn't Arthur Young anymore, it's Ernst & Young. She said, well, how did it change from Arthur to Ernst? That decision wasn't made by me, Mum, it was made in New York. I'm pleased, I thought Walter might be here, but I know Fungai's here. I'm pleased, Fungai, we're now just EY. Earlier, I covered the aspect of manual equipment with the adding machines. However, fortunately, as I became a partner, computerization came to be. And the profession and accounting in particular, this was fantastic. Although I must say, and you had your hand up for anybody who was under 47, etc., I must say there will be a number of you who unfortunately lost out. There's no greater thrill than manually balancing a ledger and a trial balance But you didn't wait for the punchline. It's first time. Thank goodness for computerization. I must say I thoroughly enjoyed it and was able to utilize all those skills. And it was certainly essential in Zimbabwe when we came across Zimbabwe $1 trillion. It was a lot easier to deal with than manually writing down the notes. One aspect of life that is constant is change. And that only varies with intensity and time. And this change in our current environment might be applicable to Zimbabwe and also the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Zimbabwe. So I refer to the tagline, yesterday is gone and we have 100 years of a great foundation for our profession, built by all of you here. Tomorrow has not yet come. It's on the horizon, it hasn't come. We only have today. So let us begin as a profession with addressing the new challenges. And I was talking about computerization, but I'll lead you on to Bitcoin, cyber currencies. Are there any investors in Bitcoin? The blockchain, algorithms, and computers seem to be taking us well into the next 100 years. Let's also make sure that our articles of clerkship remain up to speed and that we get the right quality of people to take our profession into the next 100 years. And as a profession, Martin, are we ready? I think so. Thank you very much.
Mr. Watson, I think just to, thank you on behalf of so many other younger CAs. I think it's important to acknowledge, where the Institute has come from and the journey that you have walked, those who also walked before you. We thought of getting you a calculator and a manual spreadsheet as a gift. We thought that wouldn't work. Yes. I would like to call on Esther Antonio just to give us a token of appreciation. But thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, at this point I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Rufaro Maunze. She's a holder of a Bachelor of Accounting Science Honours degree from the University of South Africa, a member of the Institute who joined the Institute in 2004. She also holds a Master's in Development Finance from Stellenbosch Business School. After qualifying in 2004, Rufaro pursued a career in Australia as a senior manager at Deloitte Sydney, in the Sydney office. She was also part of a core expert team that led the transition of varied entities from Australian GAAP to IFRS. Following this, she worked as the National Director for Technical Training and Advisory for PKF Australia. In 2008, Rufaro joined Westpac Banking Corporation, Australia's second largest commercial bank, where she had various leadership positions both in group finance and strategic operations for the retail and business banking division. She then left Australia to complete a Master's in Development Finance with Stellenbosch Business School, during which time she consulted with various international development organizations in strategic operations, finance, and governance. Rufaro is the former chairperson of the Australia-Africa Business Council, which she remains actively involved in since her return to Zimbabwe. Following completion of her master's, Rufaro joined TechnoServe Zimbabwe, a leading global private sector development organization, where she held the position of country director. She is currently the principal of a boutique management consultancy firm called Tsambe, and is also a social entrepreneur with interests in inclusive agriculture, primary healthcare, and impact funding. Rufaro also sits as a non-executive director on the OK Zimbabwe Limited, MBC Bank Limited, Imara Asset Management, and Imara Fiduciary Boards. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Rufaro Maunze.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As full protocols have already been observed, I take this opportunity to very briefly acknowledge the presence of our ICAZ President and Presidium, our former ICAZ presidents here present, special guests representing IFAC, PAFA, PAD, ICAZ members, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. My mandate for the next few minutes is to share my perspective of what a young CA expects from and envisions for ICAZ for the future. I am honored to not only present the young members of the Institute, but more so the youngish. As anyone who knows what an extended A3 working paper with green ticks signifies, or has spent several days in a client strong room, can hardly claim to be young. In my contemplation over the question of what my vision and expectations for ICAZ were, it became quite evident that we, as a collective body of chartered accountants, actually define who or what ICAZ ultimately is, and are together the past, the present, and the future of our institute and of our profession. In addition to this, it is my firm belief that we equally have a pivotal role in securing the future of the CA designate, not only in Zimbabwe, but across the international community. As a young CA, my expectations are quite simple. I aspire to belong to an ICAZ that creates, that builds, and that maintains confidence at every level of Zimbabwe's economy. an ICAZ that steps out onto the off-beaten track and remains relevant. What do I mean by this? As a profession, we are in transition. As an economy, we are in transition. As a society, we are in transition. And most importantly, as a nation, we are in transition. It cannot be business as usual, and it most certainly cannot be Operation Restoration of yesteryear. That ship has sailed. This profession needs to challenge the country's modus operandi of heavily relying on the whims and benevolence of those we have no formal routine with, and for those who are far afield, such as donors in the Americas, Asia, and in Europe, for investment and for capital and aid. What we need to move forward as a country is to have a greater focus on African money, starting with our very own. This begs the question, what are we as ICAZ doing to move the regional economic growth and integration agenda that was set many years ago by the bodies that we belong to as a country? Almost everybody in this room either works for or at some point has worked for an organization that has harnessed its strength from pooling resources with neighboring and regional countries. The network is there. It is ours. What are we doing about it? What are we waiting for? Half of our membership currently sits in very high level and influential roles in various sectors across the globe. Why is this network not the strongest investment vehicle that is leading the transformation agenda for Zimbabwe? Our profession is known to be the key custodians of good governance, accountability, and assurance. But what will this actually achieve for us in the next 100 years? Going back to the point of relevance and agility in thinking, I'm incredibly proud to be a Zimbabwean trade chartered accountant. Incredibly proud. I think we raise some of the best CAs that the globe has seen. The way we think, the way we perform, and our ability to adapt. I can share a personal story. During my career in Australia at Westpac, I encountered a very interesting meeting. I was sitting in a strategy and ops meeting for a retail and business bank, and there was a heated debate about where to position collateral along the customer's journey to first contact. People were going back and forth in terms of where material should be placed and how important it is to look left or right, etc. And the whole time, as a trained CA, I was thinking, just in case somebody asks me what the accounting impact is, I must be ready to be able to answer that question. Only to be asked by my boss, what do you think we should do? Should we put the wealth material before or after the home lending poster? Fortunately, the story ends well for me, because my Deloitte training in Harare at Newlands, before they moved to the fancy office that I never got to be a part of, enabled me to be able to think on my feet and respond. That is a Zimbabwean CA, and I'm very proud to be one. A student aspiring to be a chartered accountant in this country should not only be doing so because they see it as a stepping stone to leave the country. We cannot continue to be the factory line for other economies. It is time to turn this equation on its head and rebuild and redefine the esteem of the designation within our own borders. They say that knowledge is power, but confidence is everything. I want to be part of an ICAZ that is a source of my country's confidence and prosperity. I want to be a part of an ICAZ that is willing to shift its mindset and think less like accountants and a little more like Silicon Valley entrepreneurs. To borrow the words of our former president, Iwe Neni Tinebasa. Thank you very much for listening, and a good evening to you all.
Wow. The future is bright, ladies and gentlemen. The future is bright.
Okay, I'd like to call upon Rain Rambane Pasi to come and present a gift to Rufaro. Without selling my age, today I feel very young. I feel so young.
Listen, I think after listening to something like that, I feel extremely challenged. And it's important that we introspect, especially as we leave later on, to say, what is your purpose? What are you going to do in your individual capacity to not just be the bean counter, but to be part of this change that is here? We have one of the largest business networks in the country, and we need to take advantage of that and create opportunities and wealth for ourselves and also the country. Right. We now move on.
Up next, we're going to have dinner. It's going to be a buffet served outside while the travelers are entertaining us.
In terms of process, please remain seated. The waiters and the waitresses will come to your table and then direct you in terms of where you need to go. You will naturally understand this is potentially my favorite part of the evening. Just for this year, watch me next year, it will be very different. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy.
Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. While we wait for, we will continue. We're just going to have another draw while the others are preparing their food.
Please,
So, Mr.
dip your
Izana,
hands.
please.
Ladies and-
189.
Yep.
Sorry. Number 189.
Ticket 189. Hi, how are you doing, buddy? How are you? We meet again. How are you? Right. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you are enjoying your dinner. For now, what we're going to do is we're going to go into the second phase of our draw before we move on with the official proceedings.
I'd like to call upon Tawanda Murira. Please come and pick a number.
G40.
Depends on how tall you want it to.
Okay, the next lucky number is number 144.
These are free and fair, right?
144.
Listen, this is not a democracy. Besides, we have been courteous enough to give you the mugs on your table. You may use this tomorrow morning for your coffee and your tea. Feel free to take them when you leave the room. So no one. All right, so I'll try another one. Okay. I'm just number 153. We are trying. Oh, there we are. Fantastic. Congratulations. And one more before we close out. We'll shake it. This reminds me of my youthful days at school. Shake, shake. What happened?
Number 143.
We tried. 143?
At the back. That 143.
Oh, fantastic.
Please come and get your prize.
Right. Right, moving on, ladies and gentlemen. I would like at this stage of the proceedings to call on our Senior Vice President, Mr. Tapiwa Chizana, to introduce our guests for today.
Thanks, Tumai. Evening, everyone. This morning I was speaking to Heath Streak, who's the coach for our national cricket team, and he was saying that in a few days' time they're actually going to play Bangladesh, which is the country from which the speaker I'm about to introduce originally comes from, and will win, by the way. And he started his career, if my numbers are correct, 8 years after you. So anyway, I'll go back to the original kind of thing. So he became, so his name is Fayez Chowdhury. He's the CEO of IFAC. He became the Chief Executive Officer of the International Federation of Accountants in February 2013. He was previously with the World Bank, where his last two assignments were as the Vice President, Corporate Finance and Risk Management, and Controller and Vice President, Strategic Planning and Resource Management. In this latter role, he was the World Bank spokesman on global accounting and auditing issues. Mr. Chowdhury started his career in 1974 with Pricewaterhouse in London, initially in public accounting and later management consulting. During his career with Pricewaterhouse, he spent 3 years in Nigeria developing the consulting practice in the region. Mr. Chowdhury has served on a number of high-level representation bodies. He was a member of the Public Interest Oversight Board, PIOB, from its formation in 2005 until 2010. Mr. Chowdhury also chaired the Global Steering Committee of the International Forum for Accountability Development and was a member of the Standards Advisory Council of the International Accounting Standards Board. He served as a member of the Iraq Advisory and Monitoring Board established by the Security Council of the United Nations. Mr. Chowdhury has an MA Honours in Engineering Science and in Economics from the University of Oxford. He's also a Fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales. So without further ado, Mr. Chowdhury, thank you so much for coming. Welcome to the ICAZ Centenary Gala Dinner. Let's give him a hand, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I was told just before dinner that the structure of this evening is that you get the two scintillating speakers before dinner, and then you get good dinner, wine, and then you get me to slowly send you off to sleep. So I'll try not to disappoint. I have a lot of experience in this. So anyway, Mr. President, Vice Presidents, elected officials of ICAZ, members and their spouses, the distinguished chair of the AAB, Secretary General of the AAB, and distinguished guests, invitees, and any others who might have wandered into the room uninvited. 100 years is indeed a long time. And, the nice thing about being the CEO of an organization that has 175 member bodies in 135 countries is there's always an event that's really worth celebrating. But unfortunately, there's always a constraint on how many places you can actually go. So when this invitation landed, my assistant, who runs my office life, and my wife runs my personal life, so I have to get out of the country to try and at least assert myself in some way. But she sort of said, you're busy, you can't go. You'll just have to say no. So I said, well, hang on, can we talk about this? And so she rolled her eyes and said, all right. When I thought about it, I did come 18 months ago, and I rarely go to a member body twice. But there was apart from the fact that it's a wonderful country with a wonderful climate, except for hot days like today, and really charming and some of the friendliest people I've met. But the institute, based on that 100-year tradition, this notion of being part of what is important is really incorporated into your DNA. And the level of energy and commitment to doing the right thing and being a force for good in this country and in this society was so palpable. When we started conceiving this project with the AAB to strengthen the accountancy profession in Zimbabwe and get it involved in key areas in the public sector, etc., the fact that that commitment, which is easy to display at a meeting or over dinner or drinks or whatever, but within 18 months that commitment has remained. There are some tangible results being achieved. There's buy-in at the highest levels of government. And it's just delightful that move happened, and in the middle, lo and behold, hopefully, Zimbabwe awakens to a new dawn with a change in government that is speaking about the very same things that the profession was seeking to accomplish within this environment: accountability, trust, integrity. It's a very exciting place to be for me at the moment. It's certainly a place where I come and get very stimulated and professionally inspired, and certainly somewhere where I hope this progress will continue, and you'll become a role model for other developing countries trying to get the accountancy profession to have its rightful place in society. 100 years is a long time, and obviously a lot happens in 100 years. If you were incorporated or founded in 1918, I guess it was at the cusp or at the end of World War I. All wars are tragic, but that war in particular that decimated and wiped out a whole generation of future leaders who, then certainly in Europe, a couple of decades of abject poverty and want, and another generation built up. And then World War II came along, and that generation was decimated as well. And unfortunately, war remains. have unspeakable horrors going on in the Middle East at the moment. Is it a factor of life? One hopes not. One hopes that the human race will evolve beyond that, but we see it all the time. But overlaying that, there have been also some remarkable achievements over the last 100 years. And the one I just want to touch on briefly is globalization. Human society has evolved and changed, but it has not evolved and changed as fast as at any time in history as over the last 40 years. 40 years ago, the openness of economies was actually measured by the number of airlines flying in and out, airline routes, and balance of trade deficits. Now it's measured by access to the internet. It's measured by the digital flows and the flows of currency electronically, and increasingly with things like Bitcoin. The whole measure, the whole dynamic of how one measures progress from an economic perspective has changed. In the late 1970s, China was 2% of the world's GDP. Today, it's 20%. India was the 50th largest economy in the world. Today, it's the 5th largest economy in the world. In the late 70s, there were 3 billion people in the world living in abject poverty, less than $2 a day. Today, thankfully, that number has gone down to 1 billion people. But within that story, it masks a lot of troubling signs. Yes, wealth is being created. It's been an unprecedented period of wealth creation in human history. But that wealth is becoming increasingly unevenly distributed. The rich countries are getting richer. The poor countries are growing, but they're not growing at nearly the same rate. And perhaps even more disturbingly, within countries, without exception, every country, be it an advanced economy or an emerging economy, within the country, income distribution is widening. The rich are getting proportionately more rich, while the rest have a feeling of getting left behind. And that might just seem like an unfortunate reality that one looks at and passes over in an occasional moment of guilt. But the reality is it has consequences. And those consequences we see right now being played across in the political arena, from the US to the UK, to Europe, even to the Philippines, where we see the rise in populist movements, where we see that people are just fed up with the existing order. They want change, and they're not really discriminating about the stories that those who promise change will bring. They just want the change. And so, perhaps many in this room would say some of these irrational choices are simply irrational and inexplicable. And I think people are just beginning to understand the level of what's the word? How societies have become fractured in terms of their attitudes and their belief in what hope society still offers. There is a growing class in virtually every country who feels excluded, who feels left behind, where they have access to the democratic process. They vote in surprising choices. And coming with that, if you always need someone to blame. And it's always easy to blame, the worker in China who's working for half the wages of the worker in the States. It's always easy to blame the subsidized agricultural output from one country, disadvantaging the farmers in another. But what we see with that is a rise in protectionist sentiment of governments putting up national borders and potentially reversing the flows that have built up this incredible period of wealth creation, albeit warranting concern because of the income distribution, but really threatening to revert back to the paradigm of the 50s and 60s of trade barriers, physical and economic walls being built, and basically reversing this whole movement to creating a truly global economy which benefits people across the world. So we are in troubling times. Not just Zimbabwe has a ray of hope, hopefully more than a ray of hope, and you all have every right to feel optimistic about what the future holds. And I'll come back later to why it's important that you do play your part in that. But for the rest of the world, the picture is not quite as optimistic. No one knows how long these trends are going to last. No one knows how much damage is going to be done, while that process of unraveling takes place. 100 years, IFAC is 40 years old, so I guess IFAC is a grandchild of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Zimbabwe. And we had our 40th anniversary at our annual council meeting in Brussels in November. And I was just reflecting on the 40 years that IFAC has had. And Adrian has reflected on the 100 years that, or the bits of it that he's seen anyway, that the Zimbabwean Institute has had. And it really is a remarkable story, because there was really no such thing as a global profession, back in the mid-70s. As close to global that you got was, people from the Commonwealth who went to the UK to get their qualification and went back and plied their trade, but it wasn't really a global profession in terms of standards or cross-border sharing of information. So when those 63 countries signed up to the first IFAC treaty, and of those 63, 37 turned up for the first meeting in Munich in 1977. They were all men, which I guess is understandable for that era. When I was making these comments at Council, which has about 250, 280 people, probably only about 10% were women. So unfortunately, let me get rid of the bad news first. We have a long way to go in trying to make sure that women are adequately represented in our profession. But moving on to some successes. No one could have envisioned an infrastructure of global standards. That was inconceivable, but we have. We've started off, we actually established the predecessor to the International Accounting Standards Committee, which then morphed into the International Accounting Standards Board. We now support the standard setting for audit, ethics, education, and public sector accounting. No one thought at that time that those standards would be the yardstick against which member bodies are measured to ensure whether they're actually eligible for IFAC membership. So we now have an active program of self-regulation, if you like, that if you want to be a member of IFAC, you have to agree to comply with 7 statements of member obligations. And those member obligations are basically compliance with global standards, as well as having adequate disciplinary procedures and investigation procedures, and a commitment to continuing professional education. And we monitor those. So we have a database which initially there was some reluctance to make it public, because people felt that if we are telling you, where the skeletons are in our closet, we don't want to be embarrassed by making that public, but we've gotten over that hurdle, and it's now fully transparent, and indeed it is probably the source of information on the state of the global profession that has become the gold standard for all the development agencies that we work with. So, not only do we comply with standards, we hold ourselves accountable and report to the public on how well we comply with those standards. The effort to develop the profession in emerging economies was virtually non-existent in 1977. We now have a very active program, as witnessed by the fact that that we're here working with the AAB on developing the profession. We have a memorandum of understanding with 12 donor agencies where we agree to share information and work collaboratively to develop the profession in emerging economies, really founded on the argument that we have been able to make to them that the accountancy profession is essential for advancing economies and growing strong organizations. The profession is essential for the private sector to function. Without reliable financial information, there simply will not be investment, there will not be the flow of capital, and in today's world, there certainly won't be the flow of capital across borders. So in the private sector, I think the role of the accountant is fairly traditionally well understood. But it also has a very important role in the public sector, which is perhaps less well understood, and which, again, thanks to our colleagues in the AAB, they have grasped that nettle to make sure that gets addressed. But in the private sector, I, as an individual, can choose whether I want to invest in a particular company, either as a shareholder or as a vendor or whatever. And I have access to audited financial statements, and I can place a certain degree of reliance on those statements. But in the public sector, I have no choice whether I pay my taxes or not. It's not voluntary, I just have to pay them. But thereafter, what happens to that money? Should I not have the same right as I do in a private sector investment to know, the basis on which that information is being recorded and reported, how it's being used on consistent bases that I can understand, who I can hold accountable if I don't believe that that money has been deployed and results achieved? So it's a simple analogy of saying, why should the public sector be any more treated any differently to the private sector, is really quite a powerful one, and is the one we're using to actually try and develop champions in government to support proper public sector accounting and strengthen public sector financial management. Now the untold, well, I'm about to tell it, but the awkward part of that discussion is many governments like it that way, because it's accountability is a great word, and forget elected officials or politicians. I'm sure all of us individually, would sort of say, of course we're accountable, but would be really pretty uncomfortable when we were actually, held accountable for something or made too much of ourselves transparent so that we could be held accountable. But there's one thing about, being reasonable about what you disclose, but it's another about just enabling hoodwinking the public. And frankly, the cash basis of accounting does that. Two examples that I use when I'm on my sales pitch for this promoting public sector accountability. By the way, we have an international campaign which we call Accountability Now, which covers this whole topic. But one is, and this is in the public domain, so I can mention the country, but in India provided huge subsidies for petroleum, gasoline. Obviously, very popular with the electorate. The price of oil went up hugely, and they couldn't afford to give those subsidies anymore, without busting the budget. So some clever person came up with the idea, we'll issue a 15-year petroleum bond with a bullet repayment at the end of the 15 years, and we'll use the principal from that bond issuance to continue the subsidies. So off budget, and you've kicked the can down the road for the generation 15 years' time to suddenly find the money to pay off that loan. So, these are the sorts of things that politicians can get away with, or indeed civil servants or economic planners, unless there is a proper basis of accounting and reporting information. So the profession has an important role to play in that whole arena, and I think we all understand the role we have to play in the private sector very well. So we've done that. I think we've recognized that society wants more than financial results. Society, I think, is growing tired of organizations that rape the environment and exploit their workers and report fantastic returns, and their share prices go through the roof, and they're hailed as the heroes of capitalism. People are sick of that, and rightly so. Capitalism is a good thing, in my mind, but it needs, at a very minimum, transparency about how people are making their money, and regulation as needed thereafter. So we strongly support integrated reporting, the notion that the basis of reporting going forward should not just be financial results, but value creation. How does an entity create value? What resources does it draw upon to create that value? Is it financial resources, natural resources, environmental resources, human resources? And that needs to be transparent as well, so that people can make their own assessment of, is this company actually, fine, they're entitled to make profits, but are they acting in society's best interest or not? So that's something that the profession is now, very strongly associated with. So, over the period of those 40 years, we've gone from being 37 men representing 63 countries, really just a talk shop of, I have no idea what they talked about, the minutes are lost, but, the occasional conference to talk about developments, etc., to actually being a vibrant, proactive profession that is trying to do the right thing, in the clients whom it serves, is trying to identify the areas where it has a role to play and to be actively involved in them. And that third area I think is very important, because I think accountants have an obligation not just to be good professionals working for the service of their clients, but to be active and engaged members of civil society. We are all fortunate to be in this profession. The fact that you've taken a weekday evening off to be here shows that you must believe that. You must, we do reasonably well financially because of this profession. And because that puts us in a certain position in society where hopefully our voices are trusted and respected, and we have platforms to make those voices heard. It really puts a huge obligation on us to be active members of civil society, to speak out on areas that we feel it's important to speak out on, and to try and influence policymakers and the public about issues that fall within our bailiwick, but where we can actually bring the appropriate issues to light and contribute to a constructive debate on those issues. And I've mentioned some of them. The public sector financial management issue, the integrated reporting issue, the SME issue is one I haven't mentioned. But SMEs, often accountants, auditors, with respect to my large firm friends, listed companies, large audits. And that's great, it's a vital part of the overall economy. But 94% of all audits are for non-listed companies. And the number varies, but on average, 80% of wealth creation is created by SMEs. And about 85% of employment opportunities are created by SMEs. So SMEs are really the true engine of growth. And we did some research recently that showed that where SMEs have professional advisors, like accountants, they do much is to get about their business, but it's also to be a member of their institute and to press their institute to take on these advocacy roles in issues that are societally very important. And I think you have a golden opportunity now in the environment of Zimbabwe, where there is a huge appetite for change, and the rhetoric is great, and there's no reason to believe that it's not sincere. But delivering results is difficult. The devil is always in the detail. And it helps if there are constructive voices, not just, relentlessly critical voices, but constructive voices that try to give an honest assessment of progress, of real challenges, of giving ideas. And I certainly hope that the profession in Zimbabwe unites to take on that role. And I think you'd do the country a great service. If I could just leave you with some comments on, in the IFAC context, it was what might the next 40 years hold, and others have already touched on what might the next 100 years hold. I look more to what might the next 1 year till my retirement hold, but projecting forward to what the next 40 years might hold. I think there's a number of things. We should never forget, be it 10 years, 20 years, 40 years, or 100 years, what is the defining characteristic of us as a profession. And that is we are committed to acting ethically and with integrity, and to build trust. I think once we lose that as the absolute anchor and foundation of our profession, we'll see, in 10, 20, 30 years' time, a profession not really resembling the one that we have now. So I think that is something that we really have to, hold as a sacred trust that we pass from one generation to another, and not let any of those generations forget that. I think the second thing we have to have is foresight. We have to be able to look into the future. No one can predict the future, but we have to be constantly vigilant about what is happening. human history is replete with stories of the end of days is nigh, and the human race will be extinct, and I'm sure at one day it will. But it goes back to Malthus. Those of you who remember your undergraduate economics, in the 17th century, the German economist said that food production is increasing at an arithmetic rate, and population is increasing at a geometric rate, and therefore the human race will starve in 47 years or whatever. Didn't happen. Technology advances, changes in agriculture. Now, if it was properly organized and managed, the world actually produces a food surplus to its requirements. Health, when the flu wipes out a third of the world's population in the Black Death, etc., you'd think, well, okay, when's the next one? But again, amazing advances in medicine mean now that people are living much, much longer than ever envisioned. And I recently read a book that says by 2050, or certainly by 2100, it will certainly be feasible that human beings will live to 130, 40 years, and which is quite remarkable. The author then posed the question: if you get married at 25, just think what being married for 100 years might be like. So when I quoted this to my wife, she glared at me, and I said, "I'm sure it'll be absolutely wonderful." That's the past 37. But so things happen. The human brain adapts and evolves and comes up with solutions to try and make sure that the next imminent threat doesn't become something that destroys the human race. I still remember in the early 80s when I was in London with the advent of the chip, and there were all these documentaries. Oh my goodness, the chip! You're now going to you're going to get word processors. There'll be an electronic office. The day of the office worker is dead. And the whole hordes of people will be unemployed. It didn't happen. We adapted, we evolved, etc. I think what's different now is just the pace of change, and the fact that we're almost creating the problem for ourselves. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Moore's law, which is a hypothesis, but it's been, there's a lot of evidence to show that it's actually true, which is the memory of a semiconductor doubles for the same size of semiconductor, doubles every 18 months, and the cost halves every 18 months. So in 1965, when IBM launched its first commercial computer, the Mini, it sold for $137,000 in today's dollars. That computer had the same processing capacity as today's handheld, which sells for $600. The projection is by 2025, a handheld will have the same processing capacity as the human brain, and that by 2050, a handheld will have the same processing capacity of all of humanity combined. I mean, those are absolutely mind-boggling. And when you talk about, or when you hear people like Elon Musk, who is, I'm kind of his number one fan, but just a tremendous visionary with a ferocious intellect and a belief in that anything is possible. When he calls the pace of change of technology an existential threat to humanity, you can see exactly what he's talking about. He said, absent, the sort of right ethical regulation around how this untrammeled, sort of pace of technology development is going, we could end up being overrun. I mean, the stuff of science fiction. We could end up being overrun by robots. We already have machine learning where machines don't just respond to your command, but they can actually think. And with that pace of growth of tech computing power, how long is it going to be before it doesn't even need a computer to a human being other than just to wind the key and set it off? So change has always been, but I think the difference this time is the pace of change, and that's something that we really have to be conscious of. We have to have a sense of urgency when we do our vigilance. If we see something coming that could affect our profession or our clients or our society, we have to treat it as though it is imminent rather than something that might just happen 3, 5, 10 years, because all those timescale projections have been proven wrong. So basically we have to be adaptable. We can't just say that we have done this for the last 100 years, the last 40 years, or this is what we did 2 years ago. We have to sort of say, to be relevant as a profession, to play the role that we should in serving our clients and in serving society, we have to be able to adapt. And the last watchword, I think, for future generations is talent. It's an overused term, but I think it's an apt one. The war for talent. Certainly, in my generation, if you went home and told your mother that you'd become an accountant, it was a source for calling up all the neighbors and making your life miserable. But if you were a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or an accountant, those are all mentioned in the same breath. Now, not so much. Are you an investment banker? Are you, are you a startup person? Did you invent your own billion-dollar app by the time you were 15? So all these, the whole paradigm has 7-year window, attitudes have changed as to what young people are looking for. So, we are no longer in a seller's market where we sit there and say, we're accountants and wait for people to break down the door and say, oh, please, can I join? We have to go out there and hunt them down. We have to compete with banks. We have to compete with MBA degrees. We have to compete with all manner of other opportunities that are opening up. Because if we don't get the right quality of people, we won't be able to hold our heads high and hold our hand on our hearts and say we are a profession that is expert, that makes a difference. So, I personally see that as the biggest challenge of all. Having two children who are now young adults who love their dad, though they do, particularly while I was paying their college fees, but kind of gave me a patronizing smile when I sat them down to talk about a career in accounting and did things completely different. So that is something that we really, really, really have to be very concerned about. And just tying that back to my exhortation to you to speak out on issues. Another survey that we did as part of those two surveys, one of the questions was, what kind of attracts you to an organization? What would be a fulfilling organization to work for? And they had to, tick various attributes, and the top 3 or 4 or 5 were ranked. But so there's the usual, career opportunities and growth and so on and so forth. But 70% of the respondents said they wanted to work for an organization that had a social purpose. And I think that's something that is excellent news. It's excellent news in terms of what the younger generation are looking for and looking to do. But it's also excellent news because I think the accountancy profession has a great story to tell of how it can make a difference and how it does have a social purpose beyond counting the numbers, actually I did think of something, Adrian. How about inventory of accountants or a stock of accountants? But there you are. You see, we have to think of creative approaches, like putting that question to potential entrants to the profession. But youth, don't ignore them. Don't assume they'll just come to the door. Have programs. All of the institutes have programs that tries to get to young people. The Japanese Institute, the Japanese are very responsive to cartoons, the anime as they call them. So they've actually got a very successful cartoon on joining the accountancy profession, which they roll out to all the universities, etc. and to current. So you just have to think very creatively. This is today's problem. It's not tomorrow's problem. It's today's problem, and you've got to really start working on it today. But anyway, just in closing, I hope I haven't put you to sleep, but it is a pleasure and a privilege to be here, and I think this profession has an immense amount to be proud about. You have survived all sorts of upheaval. You've remained intact. You have retained your core membership. You've retained the loyalty of your members, as evidenced from people flying in from all over the world just to be here on this evening. And I think that speaks to a DNA that's been created that just promises great things. I think with this project now that the AAB is doing, I think the profession in this country is really poised to break through and become a major force in the development of Zimbabwe. If you can partner with government, and all the indications are that they are truly supportive of what the AAB is trying to do, I think that will really give you a lot of pride that you were there when you played an important role in helping the profession build the Zimbabwe of tomorrow, which you've all waited for and which you all richly deserve. So anyway, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Mr. Chowdhury, for a very inspiring presentation. I was particularly touched by the discussion on the widening income gap. And even though you said it's shrinking worldwide, for the past couple of years, it seems in Zimbabwe it's actually been increasing. And yes, it's been growing in Zimbabwe. And also on the talent retention, I think also with what has been happening in the country, I'm sure people would agree that I don't think we have been doing everything we were supposed to do to retain talent. So this leaves something for us to think about, and I'd like to pose a challenge to everybody present that, guys, let's do something. Let's all play our part, whichever role, whichever position you are, whichever company. Let's try to play our role in reducing this income gap and in retaining talent, especially in retaining talent. So thank you very much, sir. I'd like to call upon Anis Subanda to present a token of appreciation to Mr. Chowdhury.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, I think having heard that, I think we're poised to be disrupted going forward. And there are a few things that I'm sure maybe some of you have heard I wanted to share with you. So it's important as we sit here as accountants that we understand a few things. For example, Airbnb, the largest accommodation provider, owns no real estate. Facebook, the most popular media, provides no content. Netflix, the largest growing television network, lays no cables. Alibaba, the most valuable retailer, has no inventory. Instagram, the most valuable photo company, sells no cameras. And Uber, the largest taxi company, owns no vehicles. So it's important to understand that we can also be disrupted, and to take note of the comments that have come through. And so the question is, how do we disrupt, or how do we disrupt our own industry or our own profession? Right. I've got a few questions I want to ask my colleague here. Firstly, who is that? What do accountants suffer from that ordinary people don't? What do accountants suffer from that ordinary people don't?
Depreciation.
Yes. Well done.
Okay, so I also have one for you. Why are accountants always calm, control, and methodical? Why are accountants always so calm, controlled, and methodical?
I know. We have strong internal controls.
That's correct.
Comedy is not for accountants. Listen, I think is Mr. Ruzengwe here? Where is he? Where is he? Yes, please stand, sir. Yes, Ruzengwe. We just want to applaud this gentleman. He was the first black CA in the country. We felt that it was important to recognize him, obviously because this is how we are represented now. But it's also important to acknowledge those who were in the Institute back then who made this possible, because the step to actually transform the Institute started way before we became independent, and I think that's something that's very positive. I just want to do a quick survey. Those who qualified before before 1960? Anyone in the house? No, Mkoma. Between 1960 and 1970. May we just see those? May you please stand? Please stand. Wow. Thank you, gentlemen. Between 1970 and 1980. Between 1980 and 1990. Right. And I want to take in it. I thought I saw Mrs. Mtasa here at some point. Where is she? Oh, there she is. Please stand. She was one of the early first female black CAs. One of the early, amongst the early first female black CAs. Thank you. Right. So we are in 1990. Right. Some of you were not born, isn't it? Right. Those between 1990 and 2000. Please stand. Wow. Well, yeah, there are certain vice presidents who have not stood up yet. Senior vice president. We await patiently. We hope they'll stand up soon. Right. So between, that was 1990 to 2000, right? Between 2000 and 2010. Right. They stood. Sorry? I've been standing from 1960. Ethics. Right. Between 2010 and 2018. Right. Wow. I think there's a lesson to this. I don't know if you noticed, at each stage, the numbers continue to increase. So each generation has a responsibility to exponentially grow the next generation. And I think to those who came before us, to those who've walked the journey, and I think to all of us in terms of our roles, our responsibilities, we have so much that we need to look forward to for the next 100 years. Just give everyone a round of applause.
Okay, thank you for that, Tumai. Just an announcement. So we've got the Zimbabwe Independent as ICAZ's media partner, and they'll be flighting a supplement on the Centenary on Friday the 19th of January. So you're being invited to flight adverts or articles. And the booking deadline for this is Monday the 15th of January. If you would want further information, please feel free to reach out to myself, Tumai, or the Secretariat after this.
I think we will send out an email as well to the members of the Institute. Just to recognize, obviously, our sponsors who have made this day possible. Econet Wireless amongst them. They have also provided us with free Wi-Fi, which I have delayed in notifying you because I was worried people would be on the phone, but you can go into that free Wi-Fi. I think it's ICAZ, is it? ICAZ. Thank you, Econet.
We also have Marion Hill Chartered Accountants and Mikkel's Hotel.
Right. Now we'll call upon the CEO of the Institute of Chartered Accountants just to give us a vote of thanks. The notes, are you okay, Mko? It's okay. Here is a true test for your political ambitions that we're talking about. Oh, sorry. Oh, you. Sorry?
I'd like to recognize a few individuals. The president of ICAZ, Mr. Martin Makaya, the IFAC CEO, Mr. Faiz Chaudhry, the senior vice president of ICAZ, Mr. Tapiwa Chizana, and the junior vice president, Mr. Fungai Kuipa. Past presidents here, I've seen Walter Mpanguri, Brian Jikizana, Tinashe Rodzi, Vuli, Love, Binya Zeka, Tinashe Rodzi, and yours truly. PAB chairman, Mr. Brian Jikizana, PAB Secretary, Mr. Admire Ndurunduru, Mass Society Chairperson, Sabina Chitewe, Mass Society members, PR committee members, sister PAO, CEOs and presidents. When I wrote sister, I wrote SOS instead of SIS. And on reflection, I said, well, SOS is an acronym, it was a good mistake because it just reflects and shows how we always come together to uplift each other. So thank you for being here. ICAZ members, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to say just a few thank yous and say a couple of comments. However, before I do that, I'd like to share with you an interesting fact about the human brain. Fayez talked about the human brain. And did you know that from the moment you're born, the human brain does not stop working? That is until your wife asks you, where were you last night? So I think for those who didn't bring their spouses, it might be an idea to write on a piece of notes, Stuart Room Mickles, so that tomorrow you'll remember. I would like to thank a few people tonight concerning tonight's event. The ICAZ members and spouses who have graced this occasion, I think you deserve an applause. Please note that this is only the beginning. This is the first occasion of many which will come, and we hope that we can count on your similar support. There will be a number of events to mark the 100 years of ICAZ in existence. Our guest of honor, IFAC CEO, Faiz, I'd like to thank you very much. I must say you did not manage to put anyone to sleep. Thank you for gracing the occasion. And the ICAZ past presidents, thank you very much for your support always. Mass Society members, led by the chair, Sabina Chitewe, for being involved in the planning of this gala. And this same applies to ICAZ Secretariat. Let's give them a round of applause. And people who are normally left out when being thanked, the MCs. I know you haven't quite finished your job, but I would like to thank our two MCs, Tumaima Funga and Prudence Membere. Let's ride. I would also like to thank Mickles, Equalness Wireless for the live streaming, AMH for media partnership, Marion Hill, Manyara Chigunduru and FM for the tokens of appreciation for our speakers. And yes. And the band, the Travelers, I didn't know about these guys until tonight. I think they sounded quite good. Let's thank them as well. Our speakers, Edwin Watson, Rufaro Maunze, and I've already thanked Faiz Chaudhry. Let's give them. Thank you very much for very interesting speeches. In closing, let me say that as ICAZ members, we do have an obligation. In fact, before I go there, I would like to thank those men and women who 100 years ago had the foresight to form the Rhodesia Society of Chartered Accountants, which eventually became the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Zimbabwe. Let's thank them, even though they are not with us, they deserve our thanks. And in closing, let me say that we, the members, have an obligation to ensure that we leave something for the next 100 years. We had Fires saying that this is a foundation that we've built. He talked about earlier on when we met him this afternoon, he talked about the fast pace of change and that we need to be more agile and we need more foresight. Rufaro talked about that knowledge is power and confidence is everything. You see, I was listening. And we have the knowledge, and Fires talked about we need to speak up on the issues. So let's have the confidence to speak, especially where it appears maybe the opposition is not as strong as it ought to be. On another note, we need representation, ICAZ representation on the global stage. I sit on IFAC committee, which is PAIB, Professional Accountants in Business, with Anesu as my technical advisor. But this is only just one committee, and there are many more committees which need representation. And I think we can say that we do bring a richer experience from different perspectives, and we would hope that when the next call for nominations come, a number of our members will come forward to be considered. It's not automatic, but you can put your names forward so that you do get involved. As Adrian Watson says, we do have 100 years foundation. Let us build on it. Yesterday is gone. Tomorrow is not yet here, but we can start on something. Thank you. Asante sana.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Right. Some more draws. We will go through 3, so please forgive us. By the way, we are live on Facebook. Hi, Mom, I'm famous. People on Facebook want to see everyone in the room. Do you mind just, picking up your cap, just going around and make some noise? Come on, guys. Come on. It's 100 years. We are live on Facebook right now. We have 21,000 divided by 1,000 viewers currently. We are live. There are people actually watching us from all around the world. We've seen Dubai, we've seen the UK, we've seen South Africa. We are there. Right. Number 25. If it's 140, you complain. If it's 25, you...
Thank you very much. Sure. Thanks a lot.
Two more to go.
Number 75. Right, one more prize. Number 73. Guys. We tried.
Is secretary part of the...
It's free and fair. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure being your hosts for the evening. Dessert will be served, and soon after that, we would like you to stay on a little while and network and discuss those opportunities, share some ideas and experiences. It's a new year. There's a lot for us to look forward to.
That's correct. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. There has been a request, though, for one song to be played for Tumai. And the person who requested it, I think they specified Dorobuchi. What was that? Yes, Dorobuchi. So, Tumai from the crowd.
If you stay on until 12 midnight networking, at 12 o'clock exactly, I'll start dancing. Guys, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much.
For those who are driving, please do take you on the roads and get home safe.
Yeah.
Good night.
And your parking discs, you can give those to any of the waiters. They'll make sure that those get signed and they'll be dealt with. Enjoy, folks. Cheers.
Look at